This is the updated 2025 Porsche Taycan rear-wheel drive with the Performance Battery Plus package. And this video will be about testing the real range, consumption, acceleration, 0 to 100, charging, how fast will it charge from 10 to 80%, and finally, the cabin noise. But let's start setting the scene with some facts. So one of the biggest updates is the new bigger battery pack with a gross capacity of 105 kilowatt hours and a net capacity of 97. That translates into a WLTP range with this 21-inch Spider rims of 655 kilometers. That's really nice for such a sporty and powerful car. So over 650 kilometers for this setup. And we're going to test that. How far can we actually go with this car? Stay tuned. Another interesting update is the new, more powerful and more efficient rear-wheel drive motor, delivering 420 Nm of torque or 320 kilowatts, 435 horsepower. So it's more powerful, but also more efficient than before, also giving the car a bit more of range. 0 to 100 in 4.8 seconds, top speed 230 kilometers per hour. And as you see, this is not the ugly standard wheels. This is the 21-inch Spider wheels. So 305s at the back, 265s at the front. And this is Goodyear Eagle F1 tires. Faster and more impressive charging is also on the agenda of updates. The Taycan has 2 charge ports. On the left, we have the AC charging, home charging, 22 kilowatts, 3-phase support. On this side though, we have the fast charging, the DC charging, and that's updated. It went from 270 in the old version to 320 kilowatts in this one. And 10 to 80% should take only 18 minutes. Is that too good to be true? I'm gonna test that soon, so stay tuned for my charge test. There is one more interesting thing when it comes to charging. Porsche has recently added a DC to DC charger, which means that you can charge it on 400 volt chargers and still reach a top speed of 150 kilowatts. That could be compared to other cars with 800 volt systems that only can charge with a top speed around 75. That means that you can utilize 400 volt systems without waiting too long. I think that's enough of facts. If you want to know more about the Porsche Taycan, I have recently made a full review of it with all the facts, all the tests. I put the link up here, so please don't miss that one. I think it's time to start with the range and consumption test. Let's go. So this is the first part of my range and consumption test. I have been driving almost 25 kilometers. The total stretch is 80 kilometers long. Always the same stretch with all the cars I test. Current conditions, 16 degrees Celsius outside, dry roads, no wind, so good conditions. I call this Swedish summer conditions. More about the stretch. It's speed limits between 50 all the way up to 110 kilometers per hour. Average speed is 93 kilometers per hour. So that's what we are comparing and testing. And I stick to a set of rules. Rule number 1 is to always stick to the speed limits. Rule number 2, drive mode set to eco. In this case, it's called range. That's active, as you see on the screen. Rule number 3, the last rule, is to set the AC to 20 degrees Celsius and auto, and that's set. I have actually tried setting it to Eco Plus mode, the AC, or the climate system, but I almost suffocated, so I turned that off. So Eco is working fine, Eco Plus, no way. I'm not gonna drive with Eco Plus active because not gonna work, not today. Average consumption after 25 kilometers is currently 15.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, so almost 15. That's really low. That's really low. Let's see how this ends up. There is a thing I always do in my range test, and that's talking about the EU regulated speed limit warning. That's for cars manufactured from 2024 and onwards. So this car is included. And that's the beep. It means that if I drive a bit past the speed limit, like in this case 84 on a 80 stretch, it starts beeping. And that can be annoying. But Porsche has fortunately figured out a way of quickly turning that off. And it's a clever way, because there is two shortcuts in this car. One to the left on the steering wheel. It's the diamond-shaped icon. So if I press that one, it's actually mapped to the function that turns off that warning. So if I long press it, I activate that menu and I can that way remap that button to something else. There is another one that's a diamond with a diamond inside. That's also a shortcut. In this case, that's called the instrument cluster button. You can also bind that to the function you want it to be. In this case, it's set to the speed warning, and the steering wheel is set to acoustic speed warning. So very easy. With one press, you deactivate that annoyance. Just hit the halfway, 40 kilometers past, average consumption 14.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. This is sick. I mean, for such a big car, this is really amazing. And with that battery size, 105 kilowatt hours of gross capacity, that's sick. I mean, under 15. Let's see how this ends. Really excited about this one. Cool info. To the left in the instrument cluster, I have the current possible charge speed. It says 280 kilowatts. State of charge currently 16%. So that's kind of a reverse charge curve indicator. It shows you at the current conditions, state of charge, temperatures, etc., how fast you will charge at this specific point. And currently it's 280, 270. That's good because the maximum charge speed, as I said, is 320. And I'm soon testing that. Will we be able to max out the charging? Will we be able to charge it from 10 to 80% within 18 minutes? That's interesting. And now at 15%, it actually gives me a warning and says, please monitor the range. But it's a green message. Green is still good. Next thing I want to talk about is the steering wheel. I love the design of the steering wheel. I love how they have designed the buttons. There is no haptic feel, haptic touch. It's hardware buttons with two scroll wheels, one on each side. Really easy to maneuver. You never need to look at it. Very easy to find with your thumb. So neatly integrated. And as a true Porsche mindset, there's only one way, and that's forward. And that's very obvious here because the media controls to the left only has a skip button. You can't go reverse, you can't go backwards. I like that. Only forward. That's how I think and how Porsche think. So we are in line. Fortunately, there is a solution to that, and you can actually rebind the crystal or the diamond shaped button and bind that to reverse song. But I don't want to do that. I'm only looking forward. And to be honest, I much prefer having that button bound to the deactivation of the speed limit warning. So let us summarize the range and consumption test. The consumption according to the car ended up at 15.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. The thing is that it overreports the distance. So it overreports the distance by 3.75%, which actually translates into a true consumption of 16.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's still an impressive number because with that said, it gives us a range for 100% of the battery of 602 kilometers. I mean, that's a lot. 602 kilometers compared to the stated 655. That's 92%. That's not bad. 92% of the stated WLTP range. I mean, that's good for this cycle I'm doing. Not bad at all. Let's move on and have a look at the acceleration. So I will do a couple of 0 to 100 km per hour accelerations and see how it ends up. Okay, so I'm ready for the first acceleration test. State of charge 88%. It's 17 degrees outside and dry roads. I have sports mode activated. Let's activate launch control by pressing the brake. Now it's active. Go. Ooh. Okay, so 0 to 100 in 4.6 seconds. 0 to 60 miles per hour, 4.38 seconds. I'm ready. Oh, it's spinning. A lot of wheel spin. Second gear. Okay, so 4.74 seconds. 0 to 60, 4.51. Let's do a last try. Let's get ready for a final attempt. State of charge 87%, same conditions. Let's activate launch mode. Launch mode active. Go. Ooh. The quickest time yet, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.58 seconds, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.36 seconds. So the best possible time was 4.58 seconds. That's 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 4.36 seconds, 0 to 60 miles per hour. Porsche states 4.8. So this is actually 0.2 seconds below that number, and if I remember it correctly, this is usually how Porsche does it. They set a time, but the car normally over-delivers and is quicker than they self-claim it to be. So almost 4.6 seconds, that's impressive. I mean, for being a rear-wheel drive car only, with some wide tires though, it still achieves a good time. And I guess this is more or less about the best you can see on a rear-wheel drive car only. I mean, it's hard to keep the torque to the ground without spinning the wheels. With that said, it's really fun to drive because it's some kind of more energy and it feels a bit more alive than other cars I've tried. Especially when you have the second gear, it really enhances the feeling when accelerating, and it also throws the back a little bit, so it's a bit more unstable, a bit more sometimes unsophisticated than other cars. They doesn't try to hide all the feelings in the car, so you feel that this is a Porsche. That's always good. Let's move on to the cabin noise test. I always do the cabin noise measurements the same way in all cars. So I place the microphone at the headrest height of the passenger side here at the front. And I measure in fixed speeds on a fixed set of roads, 50, 70, 90 and 110 kilometers per hour. And this is the final result. And to help you set this into a perspective, the Porsche is not that silent actually. And I guess this is not Porsche's main game to create silent cars. They are more into creating fun to drive, engaging sporty vehicles, and they have achieved that in this car. But the noise level leaves some parts to wish. And compared to cars like Neo ET7, Mercedes EQS, BMW i5, M60, those are all cars that's more silent than this one. And in some cases, it's a big difference. This is more in line with the Kia EV6 GT. And a lot of the noise is of course coming from the noisy rubber, the wheels, the tires on this car, because they are wide and they are focused on sportiness. I mean, it is the Goodyear Eagle F1 tires. They are not silent. So that's probably one of the main reasons for a noisy cabin. Whatever. Let's move on to the things you all have been waiting for, I guess, is the charge test. So I took the car, charged it from 10 to 80%, and this is the final charge curve. Total charge time, drum roll, very impressive number, 16.59 seconds. So let's say 17 minutes. That's impressive. That's under Porsche's stated 18 minutes. So 16 minutes and 59 seconds. That's really nice. And I didn't even achieve the top speed because I had some trouble preheating the battery pack. There is a manual activation of the preheating, but since I drove the car down to 7 or 6% state of charge, the preheating functionality wasn't possible to activate during such a low state of charge. So I entered the charger with a bit of a too cold battery pack, just around 20 degrees. The top speed I achieved was actually 302 kilowatts, and that was around 10 or 11% compared to the stated 320. But I think that was due to a bit too cold battery pack. Impressive though, at 70%, the car still manages to get just about 200 kilowatts of power. That's really nice. And at the end, it really dropped. So at 80%, it was 100 kilowatts. But the biggest drop was between 79 and 80. So a very flat and nice charge curve with high speeds all the way. So 17 minutes, this is the quickest car I have ever charged, I think. The car that comes closest is actually the Xpeng G9. That's also a charging king, really impressive. Good job from Porsche, really nice charge curve. You will never spend that much of a time at the charger, especially if you choose like networks from Ionity. I will try to summarize my experience with this car and this video in a good way. I mean, I have had the car for a week now. I have been driving it around as much as possible, and I really like this car. I really like it. And what impresses me the most is Porsche has somehow managed to put their DNA from the combustion engine cars into this fully electric car. You feel that this is a Porsche. You feel it when you drive it, you see it when you look at it, you see it when you sit inside the car. All in all, it's a very nicely packaged car, and it's a good blend between a analog and mechanical car and the digital electric era. I think it's a great mix, and it's a inspiring car, especially to drive. And I have tried it on a bit of slippery or wet roads. Oh man, it's really engaging. It's so fun to drive. And the artificial sound, I think it's the best artificial sound ever. I think so, because before that, I actually loved the sound of the BMW i5, M60, really nice. But this is another level. This is almost like a combustion engine, but a bit more high-tech, but you get the same kind of feeling. On the other hand of the sportiness, you have the comfort. I mean, the air suspension, that comes as a standard, by the way, from now on. That's also one of the updates for the 2025 model. Normally, air suspensions tend to take the fun away from the cars because it gets too lean, too comfortable, and you lose some of the contact with the road. But I don't think you do that with this setup on the Taycan. They have managed to balance it in a good way. It's still very comfortable on highways, but you still have that feeling when you drive it in a sportier way. When you set it to the sport settings, you still feel the steering wheel. It's very direct, and the suspension works with you in a good way without being too harsh and without being too comfy. Doesn't give you that boat musty, numb feeling as other EVs with air suspension tend to do. So I think this is the sweet spot of air suspensions and the sweet spot of mixing sportiness with comfort. And if you let the performance and the comfort to the side, it also brings the practical aspects like a decent boot space, but especially the range. I mean, the range together paired with the amazingly good charging, this is a road trip monster. I mean, you can travel long trips with comfort, but also with very few stops. And when you stop, they are short. So it's a perfect mix. I mean, you don't need to sacrifice anything in this car. The only thing you sacrifice is a wallet, because it's still expensive. Das ist erst meine Freunde. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. So if you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and engage. Share your thoughts about the updated Taycan. What do you think? Is it good enough? Does the changes make any sense? Let us have that discussion in the comment section. And as I always say, stay electric. Thanks for watching. Speak to you soon.